The courthouse loomed tall and cold against the gray sky, a monument to order and consequence. Inside, the tension was palpable. News of Victor Hensley's shocking arrest and Elijah Grant's unexpected confession had sent shockwaves through Lakeside Motors and the entire community. Reporters huddled in the hallway, their murmurs a background hum to the heavy footsteps echoing through the marble halls. Victor sat in the defendant's chair, his once proud posture now slumped and weary. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his eyes rimmed red from restless nights. Across the courtroom, Elijah's calm and composed demeanor seemed almost unshakable. The man who had once been just a janitor was now at the center of a scandal that had turned Lakeside Motors upside down. Detective Marla Kincaid stood to give her testimony. She recounted the sequence of events: the missing cash, the broken glass, the tampered security footage. The evidence against Mr. Hensley was overwhelming, but the discovery of the second figure in janitor's garb raised serious questions about the integrity of the initial investigation, she said. Victor's lawyer, a sharp, slick woman named Cynthia Hayes, took the floor next. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my client was set up. There is no direct evidence linking Victor Hensley to the theft of cash. What we have is a man scorned, Elijah Grant, who sought revenge at any cost. We ask you to look beyond the smoke and mirrors. Elijah's lawyer, meanwhile, framed his client as a man seeking justice, not vengeance. Elijah Grant was forced to endure years of humiliation and prejudice under Victor Hensley's management. His actions were misguided, but they were driven by a profound desire to expose the truth about Lakeside Motors and the corrupt practices within. Victor swallowed hard as the prosecution began to reveal details that hadn't yet surfaced, documents exposing financial irregularities, shady deals orchestrated under Victor's watch, and discriminatory hiring practices that Elijah had quietly documented for years. Then came the bombshell. Cynthia Hayes called surprise witness Marcus Lane, a former Lakeside Motors accountant who had gone silent since the scandal broke. Marcus took the stand, adjusting his glasses nervously. I worked with Mr. Hensley for over a decade. Marcus began. I can confirm there were discrepancies in the company's books, but I never saw Mr. Hensley personally take money. That said, I know of someone else who benefited from the missing cash. Someone who had motive and means. Elijah Grant. A hush fell over the courtroom. Victor's eyes widened in disbelief, and Elijah's lips tightened. Marcus continued. Elijah had access to the showroom and the safe after hours. And the hooded figure on the security footage? That was him. Detective Kincaid frowned. But Mr. Grant already confessed to manipulating the footage to implicate Mr. Hensley. Marcus nodded. Yes, but the real theft happened before that. Elijah staged a break-in to frame Victor and discredit him. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Victor's defense team jumped to cross-examine Marcus, trying to undermine his credibility. But the damage was done. The story was far more complicated than anyone expected. That evening, the courtroom emptied, but Victor lingered. He found himself alone with Elijah in the dim corridor. The two men stared at each other, years of bitterness swirling in the charged silence. You could have just reported me, Victor finally said, voice hoarse. Why go through all this? Elijah's eyes were dark pools of regret. Because it wasn't just about the money, Victor. It was about the years of lies, the hate, the injustice you hid behind your suits. I wanted you to feel what I felt. Powerless, invisible. Victor looked down, ashamed. I was scared. Scared of losing everything. I didn't see you, not really. You never tried, Elijah replied softly. A long pause stretched between them. Then Elijah spoke again. We both lost something here. Victor nodded slowly. Maybe this is the only way either of us can finally get what we deserve. Days later, the courtroom reconvened for closing arguments. Prosecutor Diane Myers was firm. Victor Hensley is guilty beyond reasonable doubt. He stole from the company he swore to lead. Elijah Grant manipulated the situation out of bitterness. But that doesn't erase the crime. Cynthia Hayes stood and addressed the jury. The truth is tangled in this case. Victor Hensley is not innocent, but neither is Elijah Grant. Both men let their pride and pain blind them. But the real question is, who took the money and why? Elijah's lawyer stepped up last. Elijah's actions were desperate, yes, but Victor Hensley's career was built on stepping on others. The corruption in Lakeside Motors runs deeper than this case. We need to look beyond one man's guilt or innocence and ask, how did the system fail us both? The jury retired, and the courtroom fell silent. Victor felt the weight of his future pressed down like a mountain. Elijah remained calm, but a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. When the jury returned, the foreman's voice rang clear. On the charge of theft against Victor Hensley, we find the defendant not guilty. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Victor blinked, disbelief washing over him. For the charge of tampering with evidence and conspiracy, we find Elijah Grant guilty. Elijah's face remained unreadable as the judge announced his sentence. Probation and community service, acknowledging his motives but condemning his methods. As the courtroom emptied, Victor approached Elijah. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly, "for the way I treated you, your father, everyone." Elijah nodded. "And I owe you something too, a chance to change. Not just for yourself, but for the people who trusted you." Weeks later, Victor returned to Lakeside Motors. The air was different now, more cautious, but hopeful. He had begun implementing reforms. Fair hiring practices, transparency, and community outreach programs. Elijah, on probation, volunteered to train new employees in ethics and customer care. Those scars remained. The two men shared an uneasy truce, one born not from forgiveness, but from a mutual understanding of pain and the fragile hope of redemption. The sun rose over Lakeside Motors once again, but this time it illuminated a future shaped not by power or prejudice, but by reckoning and change. To be continued